We think of the Greek gods as immortal and all-powerful. But what if I told you their immortality wasn't a guarantee? In the wild world of Greek mythology, gods can be overthrown, imprisoned for eternity, and they can even fade away. This is what really happens when a god's power ends. Immortality. It's the one quality that's supposed to separate gods from mortals. While we're stuck in the cycle of life and death, the Greek gods were eternal. Their veins flowed with golden ichor, not blood, and they feasted on ambrosia and nectar to stay forever young and powerful. But here's the thing, this idea of perfect, absolute immortality is a beautiful lie. The truth, hidden in the oldest myths, is way more complicated and frankly terrifying. In the brutal cosmos of ancient Greece, being immortal doesn't mean you can't be defeated. It doesn't mean you can't suffer. In fact, for a god, immortality can become the very tool of their damnation, locking them in a fate worse than any mortal death. A god can lose everything. Their power, their followers, their freedom, even their identity. They don't die like humans do. They don't just stop existing. Instead, they face fates of endless torment, cosmic irrelevance, or violent revolution. They become living warnings that in this universe, even the highest powers can be brought low by fate and ambition. Today we're exploring the darkest corners of mythology to find out what happens when a god is overthrown, imprisoned, and forgotten. What happens when a god truly dies? Long before Zeus ruled from Mount Olympus, there was another age, a supposed golden age, ruled by a different set of gods, the Titans. They were the elder gods, children of Uranus the sky, and Gaia, the earth. Their king was Cronus, the most ambitious of the bunch, who took power by overthrowing his own father. But this stability was built on a foundation of paranoia, haunted by a prophecy that he too would be overthrown by his own children. Cronus came up with a horrifying plan. As each of his children were born from his wife Rhea, he swallowed them whole, imprisoning them inside his own body. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all consumed. Cronus thought he had cheated fate and secured his rule forever. But fate isn't so easily fooled. Heartbroken, Rhea hid her sixth child, Zeus, on the island of Crete, and tricked Cronus into swallowing a stone wrapped in blankets instead. Years later, Zeus returned in disguise and slipped his father a potion that forced him to regurgitate his siblings. Now fully grown, the five gods emerged, and the war was on. This was the Titanomachy, a 10-year war between the old gods on Mount Othrys and the new gods, the Olympians, on Mount Olympus. This was a cataclysmic struggle that shook creation itself. Mountains were ripped from the earth and thrown like spears. The seas boiled, the heavens roared. For a decade, neither side could get the upper hand. Desperate, Zeus descended into Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld. There he freed the Cyclops, master craftsmen with one eye, and the Hecaton chairs, giants with 100 hands, who had been imprisoned by Cronus. In gratitude, the Cyclops forged unstoppable weapons for the Olympians, a helmet of darkness for Hades, an earth-shaking trident for Poseidon, and for Zeus the master weapon, the lightning bolt. Now armed, the Olympians turned the tide. Zeus's lightning set the world on fire, and the 100-handed giants unleashed a hailstorm of boulders. The Titans were overwhelmed. The war ended not with a single death blow, but with a total defeat. But what do you do with defeated immortals? You can't kill them. So Zeus handed down a punishment worse than death, eternal confinement. He cast Cronus and the male Titans, who fought against him, into Tartarus. This wasn't just a prison. Tartarus is a primordial void, a pit of despair as far below the earth as the heavens are above it, guarded by the very giants Zeus had freed, bound in unbreakable chains. The once mighty Titans were condemned to an eternity of irrelevance. Their reign not just over, but erased. It was the death of their entire pantheon. While most were imprisoned, some got special punishments. The most famous is Atlas, the Titan general. As a personal punishment from Zeus, he was sent to the edge of the world and forced to hold the heavens on his shoulders for all time, forever separating the sky and the earth. His fate isn't just work, it's a constant crushing burden, an eternal reminder of his defeat. He's a god trapped in a single agonizing task. The fall of the Titans proves the first lesson of divine death. You don't need to die to be gone. You just need to be overthrown. Being overthrown and locked in darkness is one thing, but for some, the end of their power was just the start of their suffering. When you mix immortality with the anger of the gods, you get punishments so cruel, they stretch the limits of imagination. These aren't quick endings. They're eternal, living deaths, where the body and spirit are broken over and over, forever. Let's start with a Titan who ironically fought for the Olympians, Prometheus. Known for his cleverness and his love for the humans he helped create, Prometheus defied Zeus's will by stealing fire from the god's forge and giving it to humanity. This one act gave us civilization, but it came with a terrible cost. Furious, Zeus ordered a punishment that would be an eternal warning. Prometheus was chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains, but that was just the beginning. Every day a giant eagle, Zeus's personal emblem, would fly down, tear into Prometheus's side, and eat his liver. And every night, because he was immortal, his liver would grow back completely, only for the eagle to return at dawn to feast again. For centuries, he endured this cycle of agony. His immortality was the very thing that made his suffering endless. It was a living death sentence, all for his love of humanity. Now, you didn't have to be a god to suffer an eternity worthy of one. Take the mortal king Tantalus, a son of Zeus who was invited to dine on Olympus. His ego got the best of him, and he decided to test the god's omniscience by committing an unspeakable act. He killed his own son Pelops, cooked him into a stew, and served him to the gods. Of course, the gods knew instantly and were horrified. Only Demeter, distracted with grief for her lost daughter, accidentally ate a piece of the boy's shoulder. They brought Pelops back to life, but for Tantalus, the punishment was a perfect, ironic hell. He was thrown into Tartarus and made to stand in a pool of water up to his chin. Above him hung branches heavy with ripe fruit. He was cursed with a burning thirst and a gnawing hunger. Yet, whenever he bent to drink, the water would drain away. Whenever he reached for fruit, the wind would blow the branches just out of his grasp. He is perpetually surrounded by exactly what he needs, but forever denied it. A state of eternal frustration that gives us the word tantalize. Our final example is King Sisyphus, a man so cunning he thought he could outsmart the gods themselves. Among his many crimes, his greatest was cheating death. He managed to chain up Thanatos, the god of death, causing chaos because no one on earth could die. Later, after dying, he tricked Persephone into letting him return to the living world and then refused to go back. For his arrogance, Zeus devised a special punishment. Sisyphus was condemned to an eternity of pointless labor. His task was to push a giant boulder up a steep hill in Tartarus. He would struggle, sweat, and strain, getting the boulder almost to the top. But just as he was about to succeed, the boulder was cursed to slip from his grasp and roll all the way back to the bottom. Sisyphus would have to walk back down and start all over again, forever. His isn't a punishment of physical pain like Prometheus's, but the psychological torture of endless, meaningless effort. The struggle is his damnation, trapping him in a loop of hope and despair. This is the death of purpose. Not all divine deaths are so violent. Some are quieter. Some gods aren't overthrown in a cosmic war. They just fade away. Their power, tied to worship and relevance, slowly dwindles new gods become more popular. Old stories are rewritten, and their names are eventually forgotten. This is the death of irrelevance. Take the original gods of the sun and moon, the titans Helios and Selene. Every morning, Helios would drive his golden chariot across the sky, bringing light to the world. His sister Selene did the same with her silver moon chariot at night. They didn't just represent the sun and moon. In the earliest myths, they were the sun and moon. But as the Olympian gods rose to power, their duties were gradually absorbed by Zeus's children, Apollo and Artemis. Apollo, the god of music and arts, became associated with the sun's intellectual light, while Artemis, goddess of the hunt, became linked to the mysterious light of the moon. There was no war, no grand defeat. Helios and Selene weren't thrown into Tartarus. They were just pushed aside. Their roles were taken over by younger, more dynamic gods, and their importance shrank until they became minor figures in their own stories. It was a death by cultural shift, their divinity slowly eroding until they were ghosts in the mythological machine. An even stranger case of a god dying is the story of Pan. Pan was a rustic god of the wild, of shepherds and untamed nature. With the horns and legs of a goat, he wasn't a polished Olympian. He belonged to the forests. His death is one of the most unique events in all of mythology, recorded by the historian Plutarch. During the reign of the Roman Emperor Tiberius, an Egyptian sailor named Tamus was sailing near Greece when a divine voice called out to him across the water. The voice gave him a command. When you reach Pylades, proclaim that the great god Pan is dead. When the ship arrived, a nervous Tamus shouted the message to the shore. Immediately, the air filled with sounds of groaning and mourning, as if nature itself was weeping. Pan is the only Greek god whose death was formally announced. So, what did it mean? For early Christians, the timing was symbolic. They believed it happened around the time of Jesus Christ's life and ministry, marking the death of the old pagan world and the rise of a new faith. Others think it was a misunderstanding of an ancient ritual chant. But whatever the interpretation, the story is a powerful example of another kind of divine death, the death of an era. It wasn't a punishment or a battle, but a declaration that a god's time was over. This idea of gods dying isn't just a Greek thing. In fact, it's a powerful theme in many cultures. The Norse gods, for example, faced a much more final end. Their fate wasn't a slow fade or eternal jail time, but a prophesied world-ending battle, Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods. For the gods of Asgard, death wasn't a possibility, it was a certainty. Prophecy foretold their doom. At the end of time, the trickster Loki would break free, the great wolf Fenrir would be unleashed, and the final battle would begin. Odin, the All-Father, would be swallowed by Fenrir. Thor, god of thunder, would kill the world serpent, but then die from its venom. Almost the entire pantheon was destined for annihilation. Unlike the endless imprisonment of the Titans, Ragnarök is a true end. The world is consumed by fire and sinks into the sea, but it's also a story of rebirth. After the destruction, a new green world rises from the water. A few surviving gods return to rule, and 2 humans repopulate the earth. The Norse vision of a god's death is cyclical, a violent, necessary end that makes way for a new beginning. In Hindu mythology, we see another model entirely. Here, the universe operates in vast cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction. At the end of a cosmic cycle, in an event called Pralaya, it is the god Shiva's duty to dissolve the universe. But his role as the destroyer isn't evil. It's a fundamental part of the cosmic order. This isn't death as a punishment or a one-time apocalypse. It's death as a function, a cosmic reset button. Gods here aren't dying. They're performing their roles in an endless, repeating pattern. The idea of a permanent end doesn't really exist. So what actually happens when a god dies? As we've seen, there's no single answer. The death of a god is a complex idea, reflecting the hopes and fears of the cultures that dreamed them up. A god can be overthrown, like Cronus and the Titans, their reign ending in violence, and their existence reduced to an eternal prison sentence. Their death is a cosmic coup d'etat. A god can be condemned to eternal torment, like Prometheus, Tantalus, and Sisyphus, where their immortality becomes a curse, a living damnation meant to serve as a warning. A god can simply fade, like Helios and Selene, their relevance slowly worn away by new beliefs, until their names are just whispers from a bygone era. There is a death of obsolescence, and in the strange case of Pan, a god's death can be announced, marking the end of an entire worldview. In every scenario, a god's death is a monumental event. It signals a shift in the cosmic order, the transfer of power, and the dawn of a new reality. It proves that nothing, not even the gods themselves, is immune to change, fate, and consequence. The fall of one pantheon gives rise to another, and the universe is constantly being remade. And maybe there's a strange comfort in that, by showing that even gods can be defeated, can suffer, and can fade away. These myths make the divine a little more human. They remind us that struggle, loss, and the relentless march of time are universal forces that bind everyone and everything, from the lowest mortal to the highest god.